One carrier is bringing unprecedented building, ample proof of the popularity they enjoy. And now, inside the abbey comes the crowning of George VI. George VI in his most excellent majesty by the great God of creativity, Ireland, and of the British young, King, defender of the faith, Emperor of India. Being now accounted that in which ceremony that holds the English king, his royal family, peers of the realm, foreign royalty, all over the region. Here are gathered dignitaries from far countries, from the reaches of the empire.
Well, one of the biggest battles in the Weber household every single day, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is around something we call game time. Maybe in your house, you call it screen time. We call it game time. You see, unlike myself and all of you adults who are never on your phones or on your screens, my kids, that's a joke, by the way, my kids are 100% addicted to their screens. Their game time is like the oxygen that they breathe, okay? And it's probably only me and our kids, but because our kids are addicted, we actually have to set limitations on their amount of screen time. Now, thankfully, my kids are responsible, they're mature, they have healthy boundaries, they always love the amount of time that we give for game time. Never, ever, not at all. They always are complaining. And so several times a day, we'll randomly catch them on their games, bizarrely enough, when they're not supposed to. The other day, I went into my youngest son, Anderson's room, and he's sitting on his bed, like sitting up with a sheet over his head, like just kind of hoping we won't see the giant screen through his sheets. And right there, that's the face of guilt, folks, by the way. And so my kids have no limitations, but regardless of which of my 17 kids are on their screens when they're not supposed to be, every single time we catch them, they try to say something like this. But Grayson said we could have 10 more minutes of game time. Wait, what? Your sister said? First off, you strongly dislike everything about your sister. You never, ever listen to your sister. Also, by the way, she has zero power and authority over game time. It's none, okay? Or we'll catch them and they'll say, but Anderson said we were supposed to show him something on Minecraft. Anderson said, can you speak into my good ear? Anderson is 6 years old. Anderson also wants to blow our house up every single day. Stop listening to Anderson. And also, just like your sister, zero power or authority over game time. Like, let me make this crystal clear. Unless your mother, who is the ultimate authority, who has complete jurisdiction over game time, says more game time, there is never more game time. Example, if you, like me, your father says more game time, there is still no more game time. Again, your mother is the ultimate authority over games, and she's the ultimate authority over everything else in our world, okay? She is the ultimate authority. Hashtag happy wife, happy life. And so this is what my kids do, right? And maybe your kids do too, but the truth is, us adults, we do the same exact thing. So often you and I, we listen to and we take direction from people who are not the ultimate authority over us. Let me say that again. You and I, adults, we are quick to listen to and take direction from people who are not the ultimate authority over us. And sometimes we listen to other people because we like what they say. More game time? That sounds fantastic. Other times we listen to other people because we don't want to rock the boat. Other times we listen to other people and we do what they say because they're the loudest voices in our ears. And other times we listen to and we take direction from other people because we simply don't know who the ultimate authority is over us. And so today we're going to continue on with this series, continue on with this book of the Bible called 1 Samuel. And today we're gonna look at one of the most well-known stories, not only in the Bible, but one of the most well-known stories of all time, like the history of the world, the story of David and Goliath. And I'm guessing whether you grew up in the church or not, whether you're new to the church or not, I'm guessing most of us have heard this story to some degree. Maybe we just know the high points of it. The story is all about how you can conquer giants in your life, right? Which is true, that's true. But even more so, it's also a story about a young man that listened to and took direction from his ultimate authority. Or you could put it this way, it's a story about a young man who knew who the ultimate king was in his life. And so just to set this story up, as we talked about last week, the people of God, the Israelites, they asked for and they wanted a king of their own so that they could be like everyone else. Well, God granted their request and God provided and gave them a king named Saul. And as we're gonna find out next week, we're gonna talk more about Saul. Saul ends up being a terrible king. Saul has all the giftings and talent in the world, but very little, next to no character. Quick side note, in my experience, all the talent in the world is worthless without character. He has, again, all the giftings and talent, all the talent and giftings and charisma and anointing in the world without character. It is a detriment. Not even like level ground, it's a negative, it's a detriment. And so Saul is a terrible king. And so God picks another future king that will eventually become the king after Saul is gone. And who does God pick? God picks the youngest of 8 brothers, a young shepherd boy named David. And David is handsome, but David does not look like a king. He doesn't look like a king. Yet listen to what God says when picking David. God says, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Just to be clear, David, he does not look like a king, but when it comes to heart, he has all the heart in the world. And so getting to our story today in chapter 17, if you have the yellow copy of 1 Samuel with you, I want to invite you to take it out and open it up to page 70. If you have a Bible with you, the Bible on your phone, open it up to 1 Samuel chapter 17. We're going to spend a bunch of time just going through this story today. So I want to invite you to follow along. If you don't have the Bible on your phone, today is a perfect opportunity. Just go to your app store, search the Bible app, and download and get this on your phone. And leading up to our story, at this time, the Israelites' main enemy is known as the Philistines. And at this point, the Philistines and the Israelites, they come head to head and they meet at a place called the Valley of Elah. The Valley of Elah, this is it right here. It's an actual place, by the way. Believe it or not, there is so much historical basis for behind what we believe as Christians. This is the Valley of Elah. So the Philistines and the Israelites, they come together. The Philistines are on one side of the valley and King Saul and the Israelites are on the other when we are told this. This is what we're told. It says a champion named Goliath came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits in a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor. On his legs, he wore bronze, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft, basically, just to sum up all what's this saying, this guy is huge, all right? Goliath is gigantic. He's gigantic. Just to give us an idea how big Goliath is, online, you can't really tell. I'm roughly 6'4", and so just to kind of give you an idea of how big Goliath is huge, all right? And he's covered in armor. Most commentaries believe that Goliath is right around 9 feet tall. Now, I just have to be honest, the skeptic in me, when I read stuff like this in the Bible, my skeptic meter just like, really, like real 9 feet tall. Again, that's roughly an estimate. It did help me that back in the 1940s, there was a man who was 8'11". And again, it's just believed. And so I just had to acknowledge that. I struggle with things like that in the Bible, but Goliath is huge and he starts taunting the Israelites to come out and fight him. Well, needless to say, King Saul and the Israelites are terrified. Again, Goliath is 9 feet tall. He's like a mean version of Harry and the Hendersons. And so this is Goliath, but where is David, right? Like, where's David? Well, David is still a young kid at this point. Most believe he was right around 15 years of age, and he's out watching his family's flock of sheep. which is one of the lowest positions that you can have at this time, when David's dad, Jesse, tells David to go and bring out food to his older brothers who are out on the battlefield. And so David listens to his dad and he brings them out food. And just as he's getting to his brothers, Goliath steps out once again and he begins to taunt and talk smack to the Israelites, just like he's done for the last 40 days, day after day after day after day. He steps out from the Philistine army. He begins to talk smack. Yet unlike the other 40 days before, this time, David hears him. David is there. And in response, what does David say to the people alongside him in the crowd? He says this: "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" Translation: who is this heathen punk who is talking about our living God? David's like, I'm gonna open up a can of something on this guy, right? I mean, he's like, who is this that is messing with our God, that is talking smack? It goes on to say, when Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard David speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, "Why have you come down here? Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." Again, here's this Philistine talking smack about the living God, and he's done so for 40 days, and all the Israelites are scared, and they're trembling in fear, and they're over in the corner in the fetal position. That is, except David, this young kid. And yet, the moment that David begins to speak up, and the moment that David begins to step out of the crowd, and the moment that David begins to say that we need to do something, it's the same moment that David's own people begin to criticize him. The moment he steps out, even though they've been scared for 40 days, it's the same moment that they begin to criticize him. This is important because it's still true today. I promise you, you and I promise, the moment you begin to step out of the crowd, I promise, the moment you begin to step out in faith, the moment you begin to trust God and act and do what he says, I promise you it's the same moment that you will be criticized. If you step out of the crowd, you will be criticized. Why is this? Why is this? Because just like David's oldest brother, people don't like seeing other people stepping out of the crowd. It makes them feel guilty. David's older brother now feels like he needs to do something because his little brother's doing something, yet the truth is his older brother is scared and he doesn't want to. People don't like seeing other people stepping out of the crowd. It makes them feel uncomfortable. It makes them feel inferior. It makes them feel unfaithful. It is so much easier to just stay in the crowd. It's so much easier just to stand in the middle of the crowd and surround yourselves with people in the crowd who want to play it super, super safe and just stay in the crowd. And when anyone else steps out of the crowd, the easiest thing to do is criticize them. We want people to play it safe too. You can't criticize them. Look at David's response. Criticized by his own family. Yet what does he do? "Now what have I done?" said David. "Can't I even speak?" He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter. This is good. David's being criticized, and yet he just keeps going. Get this is so important. David doesn't listen to his brother. Why? Because his ultimate authority is someone else. He's criticized, yet he doesn't stop and listen to his brother, and he doesn't listen to the crowd. Why? Because his ultimate authority is someone else. He doesn't take direction from, he doesn't listen to them because his ultimate authority is someone else. Once more, people don't like seeing other people stepping out of the crowd. And just to say it, Christians are the worst at this. Christians are the worst at this. It's insane. So often Christians, good, righteous Christians will try to convince other Christians to play it safe, which is so bizarre because I don't see many people playing it safe in the Bible. That we'll do everything in our power to convince everybody else to play it safe. And something I've found is a good way to recognize if you are always the person that stands in the crowd. If you're like, Adam, how do I know if I'm always the person that's standing in the crowd? It's if you are the person that is always vocally or subtly criticizing others that step out. Looking at your words, looking at the things you say, the things you whisper about, the things that you comment about on Facebook, the things that you say in your conversations with your close friends and with your spouse, when you can be really, really honest, which one are you? Are you in the crowd? Or are you the one that is stepping out? Because I honestly don't think that I've ever met a person who is boldly following Jesus, a person who is boldly stepping out of the crowd that criticizes others. I've never seen it. Why? Because they don't have the time. And why don't they have the time? Because they're too busy fighting giants. They don't have the time. I don't have the time to criticize anybody else. I don't have the time because I'm too busy fighting giants over here. Again, David doesn't listen to his brother because his ultimate authority, who he listens to, who he takes direction from, is someone else. Continuing on with the story, listen what takes place. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go out and fight him. Saul replied, you are not able to go out. You can't. You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. David just keeps going and going. He keeps talking to people and talking to people. He keeps stepping out of the crowd. And finally, the word gets to King Saul. The king, the actual king, like the ruler of the Israelites, like the one who actually has authority. It gets to King Saul. And what does King Saul say? No, you can't do it. You can't, like I'm refusing, you can't, you're a shepherd boy, and that's a 9 feet tall trained warrior, a warrior that's been trained since he was born. No, you can't. In response, what does David say to Saul? You're right. I'm just gonna go back to the crowd. You're right. Like, thanks for reminding me. God is actually not that powerful, and there's no way he's 9 feet tall. Like, what was I thinking? Oh, that's right. And by the way, you're in control. You're like the king or whatever, and so I need to listen to you. No, that's not what David says. What does David say? Listen to this. David said back to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. That's a real man, okay? Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Rudy. You know, at this time, I just like picture David like, are you kidding me? David's like, did I mention that I killed a flipping bear? This 9-foot heathen over here? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? I love this. My favorite part of the story, Saul didn't think that David had any fighting experience. He didn't think he had any fighting experience. While David's like, all the while you've been shaking in your boots, I've been slaying lions. I've been killing bears. You want to be used by God? Kill bears when no one's watching you. I mean it. You want to be used by God? Slay dragons when no one sees you. It's not on a stage. It's not on Instagram. It's not on a highlight reel. You're just faithfully slaying dragons, killing lions, grabbing bears by the back of the head and throwing them down. No one's watching you. You're just doing your thing. No one's seeing you. You're just being faithful with your character. You're just doing this. You're just faithful. No one's shouting. No one's cheering you on. You're not making the headlines. You're not being retweeted. God's like, you just do what you do. When no one's watching me, no one's watching you except me. Here's the coolest part. David doesn't talk about himself, honestly. Instead, he gives all the credit back to God. David's like, the living God, not me. I'm just a shepherd boy. The living God, the same God that rescued me from a bear and from a lion is gonna rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Again, Saul is a king. He's the actual king. And he's telling David that he can't go, he can't fight this giant. And yet David doesn't listen to a king. Why? Because his ultimate authority is someone else. David doesn't listen to a king. He doesn't take direction from a king because his ultimate authority is someone else. Let's keep going. Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put his coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on the sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from a stream, put them in a pouch of his shepherd bag, and with his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. Saul finally is like, okay, just go. And then he proceeds to put all of his armor onto David. And so David puts all this stuff on that he's not used to until finally David speaks up and he says, I can't wear this. Just to note it again, David doesn't listen to the king one more time. He doesn't listen to him again. First off, he's like, it's too heavy. I can't wear this, it's too heavy. And secondly, it's not me. I'm not used to it. I'm not you. I can't do this. The takeaway, don't try to be someone else. Be the person that God has called you and I to be. Don't try to be someone else. Be the person that God has called you and I to be. And just to say it, when we're trying to be someone else, it's exhausting, uncomfortable, and awkward. It's exhausting trying to be somebody else. And also, everyone around us can tell that we're trying to be someone else. And it's awkward and uncomfortable for them too. Be the person that God has called you to be. Stay true to the person that God has called you to be. To be clear, right now in our world, it's popular and it's hip to say, be you, do you, live your truth. There's a huge difference, though, between being you and being the person that God has called you to be. A huge difference. I think the be you, do you is oftentimes just an excuse to say and do anything we want to do. Again, a huge gap between being you and being the person that God has called you to be. One is living according to ourselves, and the other is living according to God. Once again, Saul is a king, yet David doesn't listen to a king because his ultimate authority is someone else. Continuing on, so David's got his sling and he's got his 5 stones and he starts going towards Goliath. Meanwhile, the Philistine kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was just a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. Just to say, I always get jealous when another guy is better looking than me too, kind of like our campus pastor from Sertoma, okay? Every time I look at him, I just need to bounce my eyes because he's beautiful, okay? Continuing on though in our story. He said to David, this is Goliath, he said to David, am I a dog? Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? Goliath is offended. He's like, what? You sent this? You sent him to me? Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and to the wild animals. Once again, just to state the obvious, David is a young boy. He's facing a 9-foot-tall, trained warrior, and Goliath is taunting him. And he's saying, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna feed you to the birds. Like literally, if there was ever a time that you might wanna listen to someone else, David is there. If there's ever a time that you're in a situation where it's like, I should probably listen to you and do exactly like you say, David is in that situation. Yet what does David say? What does David say? This is awesome. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with a sword and a spear and a javelin. I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. By the way, I never heard that part in Sunday school. I maybe would have liked Sunday school more if I did hear it. Cut off your head, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. David's like, we haven't even got the battle started, but let me just tell you what's about to stink and come your way. Let me just tell you what's about to happen. Everybody here in a little bit is gonna know about the living God. Let me tell you what's about to happen. All of you Philistines that worship foreign gods, you're all about to know, along with the whole world, who the God is that saves. You're gonna know. Once again, David is facing a giant. He's face to face with a gigantic warrior, and yet David doesn't listen to a giant because his ultimate authority is someone else. It's not a giant, no matter how big it is, no matter how hairy it is, no matter how scary it is, he doesn't listen to or take direction from a giant because his ultimate authority is someone else. Listen in this last part. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly to the battle, line to meet him, reaching in his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, with a sword in his hand, and he struck down the Philistine and killed him. So David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and he cut off his own head. You know it's intense when you cut somebody's head off with their own sword. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Wow, right? Wow. Powerful. Switching to us. On any given day, I know that so many of us right now, when you came in the doors today, when you tuned online today, right now, I just know that so many of us are facing giants. Right? And our giants, they all look different. And these giants, it's so easy to listen to them. They're big and they're scary and they're mean. It's so easy to let them control and dictate our lives. So easy to allow them to become the ultimate authority over us. Giants like addiction. This last week, I stood face to face with a gal in our church that's battling addiction. She's like, I'm tired. And she said, sometimes life just really, really sucks, doesn't it? And I looked her in the eye and I said, God is not done with you yet. Giants like broken relationships and broken marriages. Giants like cancer and COVID, sin and bitterness. I never knew how big of a giant bitterness is. It's just like a beast that won't go down sometimes. Giants like loneliness, insecurity, discouragement, depression, anxiety, worrying about our kids, about what might happen, about what the next news story is. Again, on any given day, we're all facing giants. And yet, what does David say back to this giant? What does David say? David says, you might have a spear. I have the living God. The living God. You might come with a spear. I'm here to tell you, you have no authority over my life. None. You have zero power, zero ability to make decisions like this. You might be big and you might be scary and you might be really, really ugly, but I come in the name of the Lord. I come in the name of something so much greater than you. And you're out here talking smack and taunting me day after day after day after day. You have no idea. Before we even fight, you have a spear. I come in the name of the Lord. You're going to fall so hard, then the whole world is going to know about this living God. You see, the truth is, just like David, we don't have to listen to our giants. No power. They're not in charge. Zero authority. It's like my kids, excuse me? Can you speak into my good ear? What? Why would I ever listen to you? You're a liar. You're a cheater. You've come to bring death to me. I'm not listening to you. I come in the name of the Lord. Some of us need to declare that today to our giants. You come with a spear and you've taken my dad out with addiction and you've tried to get me. I come in the name of the Lord. You're trying to derail me. I come in the name of the Lord. What David keeps on saying over and over again all throughout our story, he's saying, my ultimate authority is not my brother. It's not the crowds. It's not the loudest voices around me. It's not even this giant. Again, it's not my brother. It's not the crowd. It's not even this giant. My ultimate authority, who is it? It's the living God. I listen to and I take direction from him. He's my ultimate king. He's the one who has all authority, the King of Kings. Not an earthly king, but a heavenly king. The one who reigns over the heavens and the earth. The one who has slayed and killed all giants. My ultimate authority is him. Question for us. Who are you listening to? Right now, who are you listening to? Who are you taking direction from? Who is the ultimate authority in your life? Is it the crowds? Is it the loudest voices? Is it your fears? Your insecurities? Is it the living God? Is it him? I pray today that all of us, we'd say, today, God, you're my ultimate authority. I don't want me to be the ultimate authority. I don't want these voices, and get specific. I don't want my fear. I don't want the struggle. I don't want all the people around me who are saying that I can't change, that I'm too broken. My ultimate authority is you. It's you. It's you. Let's pray. Gracious Father, Heavenly King, we come before you thankful for who you are. Thankful that your love, which endures forever. Thankful for your faithfulness. You're faithful from one generation to the next. God, and today we come and we approach you and we declare that you are our ultimate authority. I know for myself this past year, I just feel like I've allowed fear to take over. I'm in one of the best seasons of my life, and yet I got all these fears that I'm listening to, God. We set all those voices aside, all these other people who are vying for our attention and trying to dictate us, and we declare that you and you alone are our King. You are our ultimate authority. We love you. We thank you. We pray all these things in the name of Jesus. All God's people said, amen.
Hey everyone, it's Adam from Embrace. If you enjoyed today's message, make sure to subscribe to Embrace's YouTube channel to stay updated. You can also click here to check out other videos. Thanks for watching.